Happy Monday morning, everyone, and welcome into today's daily Bible reading for Monday, March the 28th. Today we are in Jeremiah chapter 21 and also Matthew chapter 2. We're smack dab in the middle of our walkthrough and reading the prophet Jeremiah, and we're just getting into the Gospel of Matthew. So if you are just now hopping in with us, don't worry. No worries at all. We're thankful that you're here anyways, but know that if you would like to go back and catch up, you can watch or listen to any of our daily Bible readings that we've done so far this year. Most of them around earlier, we were just reading one chapter from the New Testament, and we were able to get through that in about 10 minutes, something like that. But once we add in the second one, they run anywhere between the actual talking time about 20 minutes. So if you'd like to go back and listen to those, you can find those on our website. That is loudoncoc.org, loudoncoc.org, loudon.org. You can find under our sermons tab, there is a daily Bible reading option to click on that, scroll to the bottom, and you will find everything that we've done for our daily Bible readings thus far this year. And it has been good for me. I've really enjoyed our read through the prophets, a section of scripture that I am not the most familiar with. Certain sections I've spent more time in than others, but just simply read through them to familiarize myself with them some has been really good. And I hope that you can say the same. I'm sure most of us are probably much more familiar with the New Testament that we've been reading through as well. We've gone through Luke, I believe we went through Luke, Acts. I think we went Luke, Acts, Ephesians, Philippians, Colossians, Philemon, and now we are in the Gospel of Matthew. Excuse me, I got choked before I came on here, so I'm still recovering from that. But just thankful that you're here today, and hope that God will bless us as we spend time in His Word on this beautiful Monday morning here in East Tennessee, and hope that it is a beautiful day wherever you are as well. Let's go ahead and get into the text. Start this week upright, reading our Bibles together. Jeremiah chapter 21. Jeremiah 21. Jeremiah 21 is going to tell us about a request that comes from King Zedekiah to Jeremiah concerning his ability to communicate with God and hopefully gain God's favor for them as they are facing strong opposition right now from Babylon. So I'm going to read about that here in chapter 21 of Jeremiah, that this is the word that came to Jeremiah from the Lord when King Zedekiah sent Pashur, son of Malchijah, and then the priest Zephaniah, son of Maaseiah, to Jeremiah, asking, "Inquire of the Lord on our behalf, since King Nebuchadnezzar of Babylon is making war against us. Perhaps, perhaps the Lord will perform for us something like all his past wondrous works, so that Nebuchadnezzar will withdraw from us." But Jeremiah answered, "This is what you are to say to Zedekiah. This is what the Lord, the God of Israel, says. I'm about to repel the weapons of war in your hands, those you are using to fight the king of Babylon and the Chaldeans who are besieging you outside the wall, and I will bring them into the center of the city. I myself will fight against you with an outstretched hand and a strong arm, with anger, fury, and intense wrath. I will strike the residents of the city, both people and animals. They will die in a severe plague. And afterward, this is the Lord's declaration. King Zedekiah of Judah, his officials and the people, those in this city who survived the plague, the sword, and the famine, I will hand over to King Nebuchadnezzar of Babylon, to their enemies, yes, and to those who intend to take their lives. He will put them to the sword. He won't spare them or show them pity or compassion. But tell this people, this is what the Lord says. Look, I am setting before you the way of life and the way of death. Whoever stays in the city will die by the sword, famine, and plague. But whoever goes out and surrenders to the Chaldeans who are besieging you will live and will retain this life like the spoils of war. For I have set my face against this city to bring disaster and not good. This is the Lord's declaration. It will be handed over to the king of Babylon, who will burn it. And to the house of the king of Judah say this, hear the word of the Lord. House of David, this is what the Lord says. Administer justice every morning and rescue the victim of robbery from his oppressor, or my anger will flare up like fire and burn unquenchably because of your evil deeds. Beware, I am against you. You who sit above the valley, you atop the rocky plateau. This is the Lord's declaration. You who say, who can come down against us? Who can enter our hiding places? I will punish you according to what you have done. This is the Lord's declaration. I will kindle a fire in your forest that will consume everything around it. Jeremiah chapter 21. As we look at the opening section of this chapter, there is a request again from Zedekiah and to Lord, and I want to note what he actually requests for. It is salvation, yes, but notice perhaps the Lord will perform something like all his past wondrous works, so the Nebuchadnezzar will draw from us. I think Zedekiah here is referencing the Exodus and the way that the Lord delivered his people from the hand of the enemies there, and he's saying, hey, maybe the Lord will give us something like that will help us to come out on top. But the response from the Lord is no, that's not going to happen. Instead of repelling the people, instead of repelling your enemies, I'm actually going to repel your weapons. I'm going to take those away from you, and you are going to suffer. You are going to be punished. And the reason for this is what we've seen up until this point in the message of Jeremiah. I don't know necessarily if everything goes perfectly in chronological order, because again, this seems to be a compilation of the messages of Jeremiah and what he spoke. But here in this moment, it is the Lord saying, punishment is coming against the city no matter what. It will be punished. There will be plague, there will be famine, there will be the sword, and many people are going to die, and those who don't die are going to be taken off to captivity. But verse number 8 says that there actually still is a bit of a choice that can be made for you. It's a choice between life and choice between death. It's very reminiscent of what we find in Deuteronomy chapter 30 verses 11 through 20. This is a time to choose. You are at a fork in the road. It's time for you to choose where you're going to go. And here, the choice is you can stay in the city, but if you stay here, you're going to die. But if you surrender and give yourselves up, then you can survive and keep your life. Those are the choices that can be made. You can either hold on to the vestiges of what was the city of God in its glory days, and when it was faithful to the Lord. You can hang on to your human pride and such, or you can give that up and surrender yourselves to the Chaldeans. But regardless of that, verse number 11 through 14 tells us that this is the foundation of the message from the beginning. The foundation of the message from the beginning is do what's right. Just do what's right. Administer justice. Rescue the victim of robbery and the oppressor. Do this. Again, there's choices to be made here. Just like there's a choice between life and death in regard to the siege, there's also a choice that they could have been making up until this point. If they would have made the right choices, then things would have been better. If they would have administered justice, if they would have rescued the victim of robbery and oppression, if they would have done what was right, then these things wouldn't have been happening to them. But because they failed to do these things and did many other wicked and evil things, God's anger was flaring up against them. He was against them in every way. He was like a fire that was kindled against them in the forest, and that forest fire grew and consumed everything around it. And that's Jeremiah chapter 21. Here, they are suffering. They are looking now at the consequences of their sins. They're thinking, okay, God has delivered us before in a very tough situation. Maybe he'll do that again. Lord says, well, you've had your chance. The city's going down. You can choose whether you want to stay in the city or get out of the city. And really, hey, let me remind you that this could have all been avoided to begin with if you'd have just done what was right. If you would have kept my commands and been faithful to the covenant, you've been faithful to me, trusted me, you would have been fine. But because of the sins, these are the consequences that you are going to have to endure. That's Jeremiah chapter 21. Now, I should have said that this is the first chapter following chapters 12 through 20, which were Jeremiah's confessions and some conversations that he has had with God and trying to work his way and try to understand everything that's going on. So now we've moved past that, and we're looking into a little bit of, maybe I might call it some historical prophecy, where we're reading what some of the historical figures were saying to Jeremiah and their inner workings of Jeremiah. We're going to see judgments in chapter 20 against the kings, some messages again to various people, but we'll just continue to work through the text in the upcoming days. And I appreciate you being tuned in for these readings, and I hope they've been very beneficial for you as well. All right, let's shift our text over now. Shift our text over to the Gospel of Matthew. We are reading in chapter 2 today. If you remember from yesterday, we read the genealogy concerning Jesus, and then looked at his birth, a few details that are given about his birth, about the message of his birth given from the angels to his parents, to Joseph and to Mary, and how this is all coming about. Well, now we have that it is past the time of his birth, and he's going to have some visitors that are wanting to come and to see him. But this is also going to make known to an evil, wicked king that the Messiah, that the King of the Jews, is now on the scene, and that's going to lead to some trouble. But the Lord delivers his son in this way. So let's see this here in Matthew chapter 2. After Jesus was born in Bethlehem of Judea in the days of King Herod, wise men from the east arrived in Jerusalem, saying, "Where is he who has been born King of the Jews? For we saw his son, and we saw his star at its rising, and have come to worship him." When King Herod heard this, he was deeply disturbed, and all Jerusalem with him. So he assembled the chief priests and the scribes of the people and asked where the Messiah would be born. Well, in Bethlehem of Judea, they told him, because this was what was written by the prophet. "And you, Bethlehem, in the land of Judah, are by no means least among the rulers of Judah, because out of you will come a ruler who will shepherd my people Israel." Then Herod secretly summoned the wise men and asked them the exact time that star appeared. He sent them to Bethlehem and said, "Go and search carefully for the child. When you find him, report back to me so that I too can go worship him." After hearing the king, they went their way, and there it was, the star they had seen at its rising, and led them until it came and stopped above the place where the child was. When they saw the star, they were overwhelmed with joy. And entering the house, they saw the child with Mary, his mother, and falling to the knees, they worshipped him. Then they opened their treasures and presented him with gifts, gold, frankincense, and myrrh. And being warned in a dream not to go back to Herod, they returned to their own country by another route. After they were gone, an angel of the Lord appeared to Joseph in a dream, saying, "Get up, take the child and his mother, flee to Egypt and stay there until I tell you, for Herod is about to search for the child to kill him." So he got up, took the child and his mother during the night, and escaped to Egypt. He stayed there until Herod's death, so that what was spoken by the Lord through the prophet might be fulfilled: "Out of Egypt I called my son." Then Herod, when he realized that he had been outwitted by the wise men, flew into a rage. He gave orders to massacre all the boys in and around Bethlehem who were 2 years old and under, in keeping with the time he had learned from the wise men. And then what was spoken through the prophet Jeremiah was fulfilled. A voice was heard in Ramah, weeping great mourning, Rachel weeping for her children, and she refused to be consoled because they are no more. After Herod died, an angel of the Lord appeared in a dream to Joseph in Egypt, saying, "Get up, take the child and his mother, and go to the land of Israel, because those who intended to kill the child are dead." So he got up, took the child and his mother, and entered the land of Israel. When he heard that Archelaus was ruling over Judea in place of his father Herod, he was afraid to go there. And being warned in a dream, he withdrew to the region of Galilee. Then he went and settled in a town called Nazareth, to fulfill what was spoken through the prophets, that he would be called a Nazarene. I made this point in our reading through Matthew chapter 1, and I believe it bears repeating here in Matthew chapter 2, just the fact of how many times it is referenced that some prophecy is being fulfilled. Let's see if we can count those together real fast. We see one here in verse number 5 concerning the Messiah coming out of Bethlehem. That's one. Then we find another one here in verse 13, 14, and 15 concerning Jesus going down into Egypt and being called out of Egypt. That's 2. We see the prophecy concerning the slaughter of the innocents in Bethlehem. That's 3. And then lastly, we see one down here from verse 23 where he be called a Nazarene. That's 4. So within chapter 2 of Matthew, we see 4 instances where a prophecy given by the inspiration of the Spirit at the will of God is being fulfilled. And this is setting up something very important that Matthew, I believe, is wanting the people to understand is that this, what I'm writing to you, is not something that should be surprising. It's not something that has come out of nowhere, but in fact, what this gospel is, what this message of the good news of Jesus as Messiah is, it is the fulfillment of all of God's promises. And that those who trust in the Lord, those who waited for him to work out his plan and his will, they would see these things and they could rejoice knowing that God was fulfilling his promises. And that's what I want us to think about today on this beautiful Monday, is to think about how faithful our God is to his promises, that he was able to bring about exactly what he told Abraham in Genesis chapter 12. He was able to bring about and fulfill in Jesus all the way later on in the Gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. We see that in chapter 1. Well, here in chapter 2, we see all these ways in which the Lord is making his prophecies come to fruition, come to pass. He's showing what he had said in the past would be true. And these are things that there's no way that anything outside of God, outside of deity and divine working could have caused. There's no way that someone hundreds and maybe hundreds of years before would have known that this particular person would be born in Bethlehem. And there's no way that they would know that this person would come, would go down into Egypt and be called out. There's no way they would know that all these innocents would be killed. There's no way that they would know the exact city in which the Messiah would be raised in Nazareth. There's no way all that stuff could be worked out. So for that, we put our trust and confidence in God that he is doing exactly as he promised he would do. And that should fill us with great confidence that he continues to do the same for us, that he knows his promises to us, he's aware of his promises to us, and he fulfills his promises to us. And we need to put a great deal of stock in that. We need to put our absolute confidence in the Lord. Now, as we're going about our lives and as we consider his promises, that if we live for Christ, there will be great gain. There will be peace and confidence in which we can live in. That whenever we face difficulties for our faith, that we trust in him and rely upon his word and live according to it in those difficult moments, that again, he has us, he keeps us in the hollow of his hand, and he protects us and he will guide us. All of those things, all the reason we can have confidence in those moments, and the reason we trust that God will do as he says for us, is because he has always done what he has said he will do for his people. So let's put great confidence in that today as we go through this world, and as we're having to make choices, as we're having to make sacrifices for our faith. Let us make those well, and let us make those with joy, even having joy in having to make sacrifices, because we know of God's promises that he will bless us and he will sustain us, and that as we live for him, that will bring glory to his name. And as we humble ourselves before him in every way, that he will exalt us at due time. So let's keep that in our minds today as we strive to live for the Lord and be people of great faith. I appreciate you tuning in today for our reading through Jeremiah 21 and Matthew chapter 2. If you have any questions or comments, always please feel free to leave those in the comment section of Facebook or YouTube, or you can send us a message, excuse me, through the website. Again, that is loudoncoc.org, loudoncoc.org. Check us out there. You can find everything that we're doing as a church. All that has been saved and recorded and available to you there on the website. Again, have a great day. God bless you. We'll see you tomorrow as we read again on Tuesday, March the 29th.